Well, hello everybody, and welcome to our webinar on cognitive decline. So, in this presentation, I want to take a deep look into the causes, how cognitive decline is turning into a thing now. It's actually transforming our older population, and what we can do about it ultimately. And there's, like anything in my clinic, there's a lot that can be done, but it takes a lot of pieces. So hopefully we can overcome some of that and create some understanding. So just for an introduction, my name is Dr. Glenn Harrison. I'm the owner and founder of the Center for Functional Medicine in Westminster, Colorado. We work with chronic illness all day, every day. And one thing that I learned, more so and maybe in the last 5 years, is how much cognitive decline I'm seeing. And I'm seeing it as young as 35 years old. So hopefully I can give everybody some understanding of what that looks like and really what it is and how we can get past it. So that's a little bit about me and what we're going to expect here. So I'm going to start it. So let's see if we can share this. So cognitive decline is a very broad term. It's a very, very broad term, incorporating many different things. It's one of those things that that it can be reoccurring brain fog that's going on too often, and I know a lot of people experience brain fog. It can be mental crashes in the afternoon. It can be forgetting your keys somewhere. It can be not being able to find your keys more often than not, or where you park, and something that's progressive. I think that's maybe the biggest thing, is to recognize the progressive nature of this. So, when we talk about cognitive decline, it's really premature aging of the brain. I think that would be the best way of explaining it. And one thing to know, and if any of you who have worked with me, I probably mentioned to both or to all of you who's watching this right now that I work with, that our brains start degenerating around the age of 20. So it doesn't mean that our brains won't work. It means that our brains have maxed out and they start actually degenerating. The problem is when our brains prematurely degenerate. I think that would be a better way of explaining it. So now, cognitive decline, why is it important? Well, right now there's 5.3 million Americans dealing with some form of cognitive decline. But not, I don't even want to say just cognitive decline, but severe cognitive decline, such to a point that it's already called dementia. So this is not acceptable, really. 1 in 9 ages 65 and older. 1 in 2, 85 and older, and that's actually an older statistic. Right now it is 1 in 2, 80 and older. So 50% of the population, 80 and older, have Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's is a significant form of, I'm just going to change this up here. Alzheimer's is a significant form of dementia. My apologies here. I'm letting people into the room here. So it's a significant form of dementia. Okay. It's like a late stage dementia, if that makes sense. This is also called type 3 diabetes. Alzheimer's has been known to be called type 3 diabetes, and I'm going to make that connection a little bit later. Okay. But what we do see is people who are either diagnosed with Alzheimer's or who have diabetes, that it increases their risk of developing dementia and Alzheimer's by 300 to 400%. Okay, so we look at the population who are diabetics or have blood sugar imbalances, and it brings their risk significantly up. I'll talk about managing blood sugar so you don't fall into this category. Right now, the baby boomers generation, as they're aging, Alzheimer's rates are expected to skyrocket, and this is from the American Alzheimer's Association. So the question is why are baby boomers at a higher risk? Well, they're at a higher risk because they were one of the first generations to get exposed to, post-war wealth, TV dinners, processed foods, high fructose corn syrup, and it turned everything into a snowball. That's the only thing consistent with this spike in Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. Okay. Now, if you look at these two brains, you will see this one right here is dementia. This is a healthy brain, a normal brain. Look at the gaps. These are anatomical changes, physical changes. If you look at the anatomy of a brain of someone who consumes a lot of alcohol, it'll look similar. And the reason for that, it isn't that the brain looks like it's shrinking, but it's actually shrinking because the neuron of brain cell death. And you destroy billions of brain cells, you'll actually create these gaps. And then the question is, how fast are we degenerating? We all know we're degenerating, but are we prematurely degenerating? So the questions we really have to ask ourselves, is it too late? Where are we with our brain health? Is it permanent? And what changes can be made? That's the cold hard truth. And will it get worse? And a big part of this whole story is conventional medicine doesn't have any solutions to slowing down cognitive decline. And right now, there's entire hospital wards and facilities filled up with people with cognitive impairment or memory problems. And no one's asking why. In fact, I reached out to the American Alzheimer's Association, one of their locations in Colorado, and I asked them, maybe we could do a conversation and teach people on what we can do from a lifestyle standpoint to preserve brain function. They dismissed it. They said, well, we're more about once we have it, how do we manage it? It's like, well, that's too late already. Brain cells don't grow back. So our model is so skewed with this. So what are the earlier signs of cognitive decline? Well, some things to look forward to is fatigue promoted by brain activity. Someone who's driving, reading, and some kind of cognitive challenges, and now they start to get fatigued earlier than they used to. That's really what it is. It's not where we are now, but has it changed? Another one is depression. A lack of healthy brain firing leads to depression. Poor digestive function, and this should be another one, but poor digestive function is another one. It should be on another line. That makes up to 90% of the brain's output is from the pontomedullary system. So if people have significant constipation and poor digestion, we really have to ask, how long has it been going on for? And was there a brain injury prior to that, developing constipation? Many reasons for constipation and digestive disorders, but is it consistent? Is it consistent? Everybody that I've worked with that had cognitive decline or cognitive impairment, they've all had digestive issues. Okay. More moderate signs of an aging brain: inability to focus or concentrate. This is a very big one that we can't ignore. Difficulty learning new tasks. But again, always think of these symptoms as, is it progressing? Was I any different 6 months or a year ago? That's really, really what we have to look at, because it's all relative. It's all relative. Chronic constipation, I mentioned that. Opportunistic intestinal overgrowth, enzyme production deficiencies. So if these are all things due to chronic constipation, a poor functioning brain and an aging brain, these will happen. Increased sympathetic tone, something called the fight or flight system. If we are in more of a fight or flight state more consistently, you will see things like increased blood pressure, increased resting heart rate, stress susceptibility. Maybe a good question is, why do we see more blood pressure problems after the age of 55? Well, lifestyle, of course, is a major contributor, but why don't we see little kids with high blood pressure? Is it a cognitive decline? It can be. It can be. I'll talk about reversing the cognitive decline to some extent, and reduce peripheral blood flow. So when blood becomes stagnant due to a fight or flight response and our blood stays in our core. A disrupted circadian rhythm is actually one of the first signs of early stage dementia. Now, if you have a teenager, by all means, don't, they're supposed to wake up late. They're supposed to go to bed late. They're not humans yet. So they are naturally going to have a different, but adults and seniors, if they have a really disrupted circadian rhythm for no known reason, that is an early indicator of brain degeneration. Okay, you want to correct that because it'll only get worse if you don't correct it. Significance, these are more significant signs of an aging brain. Well, this is when things get really bad. Inability to work professionally. A lot of people have to leave their careers. I'm working with a teacher right now. She's only 55 and she doesn't know where her keys are. She never knows where her car parks. How could she even have a job? She had to leave. 55 years old. She's already early stage, I would say moderate stage dementia, moving into late stage dementia. That's terrible. 55 years old. Inability to appreciate life. This is one thing that'll happen with significant cognitive decline, whatever the cause is, or an aging brain, is we lose our ability to appreciate life. We lose something that I was talking about quite a bit today with some people I work with, was dopamine. We lose, and dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is a reward center. If you can't find reward in life, you lose the appreciation of life. Inability to perceive neurological loss. So this is one thing that I see a lot of. That teacher that I just mentioned, that I'm working with, the first thing when her family started to say, Mom, I think how was your memory? It was a very gentle topic. Oh, I'm fine. And she would get frustrated where she put her keys. I'm keep using this example because I see it so common. Where she put her phone. She couldn't remember the names of people. They were always on the tip of her tongue, but she couldn't recall. When she was asked about this, she didn't perceive that there was any problem, whether that was not a lack of acceptance, or maybe when we're in that situation, we don't even see it. But things get frustrating in life, and that's what this teacher was going through. Early signs of neurological disease. So neurological disease can be other things, Parkinson's and all those different neurological disorders. But these diseases can manifest in things like tremors, difficulty with direction. Now, this is one when I was putting it together because this is in the research. If you have a challenge with direction, it doesn't mean you have an injured brain or dementia or Alzheimer's, by no means. Some people just naturally have a poor sense of direction. So this is why the question should always be asked. Is it progressing? This is me, really. I'm terrible with directions. I'm absolutely terrible. I don't know why. I've always been that way. So some people, this is just the way they are. But if it's a progression, and there's many other things. So when people are pursuing these presentations and webinars, everybody, they want to ask, well, where am I? Where am I? Well, there's a few things to identify where you are in life. When things get bad, quality of life goes down. As you can see, our maximum quality of life is very consistent with brain function. As brain function comes down, quality of life comes down. It's directly proportional because you lose track of life, you lose track of order in your life, and it just snowballs. Career performance and brain age. This is a good example of the teacher, but she already had such an aging brain that it wasn't just her career, it was affecting every aspect of her life. Rechecking everything she did, and people looking over her shoulder to make sure the job's getting done. And then athletic performance. You will see this more with, people after the age of 40, usually 40 or even 30, where their athletic performance comes down. And it's not a cause of their lack of physical conditioning. I see this with athletes, actually. But actually because their brain is starting to shut down, and they have other symptoms. It's not only that they can't perform from an activity standpoint. So what are the mechanisms of brain aging? Well, I wish I could take credit to making this diagram. This is a colleague of mine, Degeneration. I studied under him a lot. So there's a lot to take in this diagram. You can see on the left side, cerebral blood flow. Well, one thing that's very important as a brain ages, or what a contributor to brain aging is a lack of cerebral blood flow, lack of blood to your brain. You'll see less nitric oxide. Nitric oxide dilates arteries and promotes blood flow. You'll see autonomics. This is automatic nervous system function. So severe, Alzheimer's, they will have their heart will start acting strange. They can't regulate their temperature. They have a hard time to regulate bowel movements. Everything starts to change. These automatic processes start to shut down. And when the brain shuts down enough, like in Alzheimer's, autonomics, your automatic nervous system, those functions that should just go on without having to think about them, they start shutting down. And that's what causes a lot of death. In fact, that's what happened to my grandpa at, I don't know what he was, 85. In 2 years, he went from running his ranch with my grandma, and they had over 100 head of cattle, and they did it all on their own. From 2 years to still running the ranch, he was in a hospital, in a care home, and passed. That's how fast many of these cases can go. So blood flow and autonomics. If you have too low blood pressure, you're not getting enough blood flow to your brain. You don't get enough oxygen. Fatty acids. You need to have proper fatty acids. You need to have high quality fats coming into your body. There's all this other stuff on the bottom. That's a little bit more complicated. But neuroinflammation on the right corner here, this is important to look at. This is the root of all evils for the whole body, but neuroinflammation is a term, and it's real. Our brains, the progression of our brain damage or degeneration is due to neuroinflammation. And we all have some. And as we age, we build more and more of it. It's kind of like collecting dust. The more we can do in our life to keep our brain inflammation down, the less cognitive decline we will suffer. And this is there again, there's no medical strategy for this. It has to be lifestyle. It has to be lifestyle. Glial cell is an immune cell that damages brain tissue, actually. So more glial cell activation is more neuroinflammation. If you have digestive problems, I work with this in my office all the time, this brain gut axis. If there's digestive problems, you are going to have neuroinflammation, brain inflammation. So anybody that's trying to work on memory and focus and cognition, there can't be any abnormalities in bowel movements or digestive symptoms. It's not acceptable. Trauma. I see a lot of this, emotional trauma and physical trauma. They get enough trauma to their body, to their head, they will turn on autoimmunity and neuroinflammation. It's like adding fuel to a fire. The brain wants to be inflamed, and it's our job, part of our job in life to keep our inflammation down. It wants to be inflamed. It wants to be excited. Trauma lights it up right away. I've seen many cases where trauma created permanent dementia at a young age. Early stage dementia just progressed. It just flipped it. And autoimmune disorders, neuroautoimmunity, where your immune system is attacking your own brain tissue. Things like MS and Parkinson's as autoimmune component, ALS, and there's many, many more. So we're always trying to fight this neuroinflammation. It's not looking just at the brain, but looking at every aspect of life and the body. If you have enough emotional trauma, they will find on an MRI your brain being inflamed. That is premature brain degeneration happening. So you got to put that stuff out. Neuron oxidative phosphorylation, this is more environmental toxins, how it plays into it, and global inflammation, that's systemic inflammation. Medications, big. Medications do a better job of creating neuroinflammation than ever bringing it down. Almost all medications create some layer of neuroinflammation. So but all of these things create an accelerated brain aging. I know there's lots on this sheet. So brain aging and memory. Brain aging can create other problems, not only memory problems. We tend to think of it as memory problems, but it's much more than that. So the question to ask yourself again, and I mentioned that, are you getting older? And are you subject to this? Do you have any of the earliest signs of dementia? And are you taking this seriously? The thing about brain health is we don't truly recognize how fragile we are as humans. And our most fragile organ is our brain. Our most sensitive organ is our brain. And that's what we need for everything. Most people don't recognize it as a concern. They just say, oh, well, that's later in life. That's not me. That's not me, until it starts to slip. And dementia and Alzheimer's doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow decline, cognitive decline that gets to that point. Doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in your 60s. It doesn't happen in your 50s or your 70s or your 80s. It starts off at 20. If there's enough inflammation going on in the brain, it's sputtering. And there's warning signs. I'll talk about what these warning signs are. We catch it early. Okay. So the earliest signs of dementia, poor short-term memory. Of course, you can't hold on to your short-term memory. Walking into rooms, other rooms, we don't know why we're there. I've had patients not wake up, but they're driving their vehicle and they end up on the other side of Denver, and they kind of come to and they don't realize how they are on the other eastern part of Denver. They don't know why, and they have their kids in the back. These are people in their 20s and 30s. Okay, it's not acceptable. Difficulty learning. Well, some people have a challenge with learning. I'll tell you the truth. When I was going through school, I had a hard time with learning because of blood sugar problems and so on and so forth, and sleep deprivation. So if there's a reduced ability of learn, again, a progressive, you look back 6 months, a year, you look back 10 years, that could be different, but 6 months to a year is a great window. Is there a change? Difficulty with directions. We already talked about that. Decreased brain endurance. This is where a challenge, like I mentioned, reading or driving, you start getting more fatigued quicker, a lack of stamina, neurostamina, more so than before. That would be a red flag. Slow mental speed. If you look at actors or celebrities, if you look at how they were before they had cognitive decline, or look at them now, you will see a drastic change in how fast they're able to recall, their tonality, their facial expression. All those things start to slow down and shut down, and you will see it when you see people side by side of before and with their current situation. You will see it. If you have any of these symptoms, again, the question is, when did they start and how fast are they progressing? That is the clinical pearl there. Okay. Again, signs of a cholinergenic pathway degeneration. Now, what is this pathway? This pathway is the pathway of memory. So it's a pathway in your brain that's all about memory. Okay, and it's a great thing to evaluate. It's a great thing to pay attention to. Again, losing your keys, phone, more and more. Constantly forgetting where your car. That should be car. I just put this slide together today. Dependency on navigational systems for direction. So there's another typo. So one thing about navigational systems, and I think it was years ago, it was Garmin or somebody put this together, and they were doing some studies. Well, actually, it was an independent party looking at Garmin. Garmin wasn't going to criticize their technology. Is there a problem with relying on technology for memory? I think we could probably all appreciate that, right? Calculators. Well, now kids can't even do math unless they have their cell phone with them. Navigational system. Same with me. I use a navigational system. I tend to become dependent on it. So this is the simple act of not exercising your brain on these different dimensions. And if you don't exercise your brain on these different planes and dimensions, you will lose the function. So the more I use my navigational system, what happens? My ability to navigate actually gets worse. So this is the concept of neuroplasticity. Some people always have to write everything down more so than before. Some people depend on writing everything down, and it affects their memory. So they got a challenge. We have to challenge their memory. Constantly forgetting appointments, tasks, etc. So what can you do? Well, first you have to identify your brain state. What state is your brain in? Is it healthy? Is it mild aging? Is it moderate aging? Or is it severe aging? And what is possible? Well, the possibilities to get out of these challenges are dependent on the state you're in. Again, these moderate dementia doesn't just happen, and brain aging doesn't just happen. It's the progression. So mild aging symptoms are reversible. I see a lot of that in my office where people can't sit through an hour appointment because they start getting a foggy brain. They can't sit through it. 30 minutes is tops. And that's just the way of their life. My paperwork in my office is really long. If any of you I've worked with are listening to this, you know that. I've had people take multiple hours to finish the paperwork. That takes commitment, but it also gives us an indication of how fast their brain's working. Okay. That's more mild usually. Moderate. you can preserve moderate, meaning moderate brain aging, or you really can't reverse it. You can keep where you're at. Sometimes you can get a few breaks clinically and show improvements, but it's not like you're going to reverse it. Okay. Severe brain aging, where there's a lot going on, some of the things we talked about, you can't do anything about. And that's how my grandpa's brain was. It started off slightly and then it just snowballed. So we really have to take care of our brains. Can't get a transplant. There's no medication to fix it. In fact, like I said, most medications cause problems. The biggest culprit of medications that cause brain problems is cholesterol medication, statin medications. They have one of their side effects is causing dementia, memory impairment. So we got to be careful with these things. So I'm not here saying don't go on your medication, but do everything so you don't require it. Get some help. We can help. And I can point you in the right direction if we're not in your area. So what the brain needs? Well, there's a couple simple ones here. It's actually very simple. Simple with technical pieces. Glucose. You need to have sugar, not too much, not too little. I see a lot of cognitive impairment in my office just because their brain isn't fueled up. This is where diabetics and pre-diabetics run into problems. Their blood sugar spikes and then crashes, and spikes and crashes and spikes and crashes. And as a result of that, they go into excess glucose starving, excess glucose starving. Their brain surges and starves. And over time, that's like starving your car engine for a little bit of oil. Well, that engine's going to prematurely wear out a lot faster, and it's going to create symptoms. Brain fog, afternoon energy crashes, all of those things. Those are early stages of brain injury. You can't ignore them. And I see so many people in their 20s. If we, I'm picking on the baby boomers and my parents were baby boomers, they're entering that generation, they're aging, they're getting in the higher risk timeline. That is going to be one of the better populations, because the baby boomers weren't living on Red Bull. The baby boomers weren't living on high fructose corn syrup as much as these younger generations. These younger generations, they're 2 years old and living on Red Bull and all sorts of crap food. So it's serious, very, very serious. So the second one, oxygenation. So you need to have enough sugar. That's your fuel source. Not too much, not too little. Oxygen. You have to have oxygen. Now, if you go up to, I'm trying to think around here in Colorado, if you went up to Pikes Peak, it's 14-ish, a little over 14,000 feet. But at 15,000 feet, you lose, 35% of your short-term memory. 35%. Years ago, I worked in the Himalayan mountain range. I was in the Tianchen mountains of the Himalayas. And I was working in the mining industry. That paid for school for many years. But our camp was at 12.5, and our workstation was at right around 14.5, 15. We were living up there for months. It wasn't easy at all, but most people's bodies would acclimate. But I brought my books up there. I was going to study between terms when I was working on my undergrad. And there was this British doctor on site, I'll never forget. He looked at me and he started laughing at me, and I didn't know why. And he said, "You can't study up here. You won't remember anything." I said, What do you mean? And then he got into it, and then I started to research it. And yeah, so long story short, you need enough oxygen. Many things can disrupt oxygen. Asthma, smoke, we had a lot of that in Colorado. Poor posture will compromise at least a little bit of oxygen. Requiring a CPAP machine at night, make sure. So if you have any apnea issues, all of that. So there's a lot of things that can compromise our oxygen, and oxygen is transported through the body with blood. And the only way your brain can get oxygen is via blood. So we got to be careful with blood pressure medications. If our blood pressure is too low, it's going to be a problem. I'll get more into that. And stimulation. You need 3 forms of stimulation. You need physical, social, and cognitive. Cognitive is thought challenges. Maybe for me, cognitive would be not using my navigational system when I'm traveling. Okay, but you need all 3. So that's what we need. Now, there is I like this little table here that I put together because it puts the 3 together, right? Glucose, oxygen, stimulation. So if we look at glucose, I talked about uncontrolled diabetes or in prediabetes. Blood sugar fluctuations are not allowed. It's not accepted. It has to be controlled. And I say use lifestyle. 90% of it should be lifestyle. 10% of managing diabetes should be medications, because insulin and metformin and those medications, they cause problems to our brain. Insulin is the most inflammatory thing you can do to your body, and therefore the most inflammatory thing you can do to your brain. We all need it. Every time we eat something, we need insulin. But with our conventional medical model, and there's a type 2 diabetic, they're not worried about too much insulin. Their goal is to get the blood sugar down. So we got to do what we can and require less insulin. Even when we're eating normal food, we want to eat foods that are not going to spike insulin. And type 1 diabetics, they need insulin. Thank goodness we have insulin. You know, it's needed. But we want to do everything to not require much insulin. I worked with many type 1s, and most of the type 1s, I would say all of the type 1s that I worked with, 30 years of type 1 diabetes, 40 years of type 1 diabetes, and we were able to significantly reduce their requirement for insulin. I've seen as high as 1/15 of the insulin that they were taking before we started working together, and they made the required lifestyle pieces and put them into place. None of their doctors were concerned about them taking too much insulin. Their goal was getting their blood sugar down. But insulin is like a fuel for your brain inflammatory fires. We don't want too much of it, okay? So we want to minimize your insulin requirements, ultimately is lifestyle. Sweet starch cravings, not allowed. If we crave sweets and we crave starches all the time and we need them, that means your blood sugar got too low and your brain is starving, and that's why you're craving these things. You can get past these, but you need to get some guidance with that. Fatigue before or after meals is not allowed as well. That means there's a blood sugar crash after the meal. Foods will play into this, but this is not allowed. So you control these things to maintain your glucose, which is one of 3 pieces that your brain requires. Oxygen, I talked about sufficient blood pressure. Medications play a role. Here's a rule of thumb. If your systolic number and your blood pressure, that's the top number, is double digits. So a textbook blood pressure, maybe most of you might know, should be textbook. This is textbook. 120/80. The 120 is the systolic number, your top number. 80 is your diastolic. The top number, your systolic, we never want that number in the double digits. We never want it 99 or 98 or 95. That is not acceptable. That means there's not enough blood pressure to get blood and oxygen and glucose and nutrients to your brain. Your brain will starve. When we see people in the double digits of their systolic, like that 99, 98, something like that, that will create dizziness in most people. And without a doubt, that's premature brain degeneration right there. And again, our medical community is worried about the heart to keep the human alive so they don't have a heart attack. So they want to get that blood pressure down. I got a lot of people coming into my office. They say, I ask, how's your blood pressure? And they say, Dr. Harrison, it's really good. My doctor's so proud of me. It's really low. I'm like, how low is it? So we got to be careful with that. And then sometimes people will start the medication, they get their blood pressure down, and then they start getting memory problems, slow response time, coordination difficulties. Be careful with it. Prolonged hypertension. This is the opposite. Too much blood pressure will cause brain injury and damage. This actually penetrates this blood-brain barrier, which is a coating over your brain. It penetrates it, and your brain will be more susceptible to inflammatory entities in your bloodstream. So blood doesn't go straight to your brain. It has to go through this filter. If there's too much pressure, it will create injuries. The beautiful thing is the blood-brain barrier, this filter, it can replace, it can recover, it can heal. But again, blood pressure is important. Too much, too little is a problem. And to get oxygen in your body, you have to have enough blood pressure, but you have to have enough blood pressure going to all of your body, not just your brain. So enhanced circulation. That's why activity is absolutely necessary, and that's running into stimulation with physical stimulation. You need to be active. You need to interact. When there was research on what the brains needed, and they said, okay, we need some physical stimulation. That was all that was discussed in the earlier years. And now we realize that we need to stimulate the brain to help it grow. It actually, when you stimulate a neuron, it sends nutrients to its neighbor neuron, its neighbor brain cell. is really exciting, actually. I think it is. So you need to, it's like a sponge. A great way of it is a sponge with nutrients. You squeeze, and you have two sponges together. You squeeze one sponge with the nutrients. It drips into the other sponge. The other sponge absorbs it. That's how brain cells work. It's like squeezing sponges, sending nutrients from one to the other. If you are not stimulating different parts of your brain, you're not promoting brain health. You're not promoting brain nutrition. You're not promoting brain growth, because the brain does grow, neuroplasticity. So that's why physical stimulation stimulates certain parts of the brain. Social and emotional stimulation, social interaction. We don't see much of this in retirement communities. Well, hopefully they're promoting it now. But if you see, the elderly retirement communities that they're really focusing on later stage dependency. If you have one individual in one of these care homes that are very mentally alert, and you put them in with a bunch of people that aren't communicating, that are keeping to themselves, that one individual, if they don't have a social interaction with stimulated people on their level, their brain declines quickly. You'll see it within 6 months. So pay attention to your company, but we need that. And social is not social media. That doesn't count. Social interaction, being around people, watching body language, all of that. That's that. And cognitive challenges, brain games and all that is good. Most people in our modern day, they have enough cognitive stimulation. Okay? But there's quite a bit on that slide. Now, back to this slide, I started to go through this, but hopefully you can get some appreciation of the cerebral blood flow and blood pressure. I'll get more into fats here in the end. Over here, microglial neuroinflammation, that is an immune cell. Methylation, I'm going to talk about. I talked about medications. And then there's the blood-brain barrier, the neuroinflammation. It destroys the blood-brain barrier if there's enough inflammation in the brain or too high of blood pressure, okay? But that can heal. Almost everything in the body can heal. So brain nutrition now. So we talked about some lifestyle factors. I'll get into more with regards to brain nutrition. So nitric balance, this is a great thing for oxygenation, okay? It dilates arteries. There's a few strategies. This is one I really like. I'll see cognitive impairment lift just because of a product like this. This puts nitrogen in the arteries and they dilate. You could get more oxygen. The beautiful thing is physical activity, if it's intense enough, does the same thing. So this is doing what physical activity should do, okay? If you can't be really physically active, this can help get blood to your brain and get it around the body. Citrinox is another form, is another product, another company, but it does a similar thing. It promotes blood flow. It dilates your arteries. It can help regulate blood pressure like the other one. Two different strategies. This one, the research shows that it lasts a little bit longer. The other one will last a few hours. This one will last multiple hours until you take it again. Glycoberine MX. This is brain nutrition to balance glucose. Remember, we don't want our blood sugar too high or too low. Glycoberine has some really interesting ingredients to prevent the surges in blood pressure, blood sugar from going too high up or too far down. So your brain can get a steady flow. I only prescribe this for people if they're pre-diabetic or a diabetic and we're using some assistance in addition to into lifestyle. One thing to know, I get a lot of people come into my office and they're like, oh, Dr. Harrison, what supplement can I take for this? And I'm like, oh, supplements are secondary. Supplements will never do what lifestyle can, but what supplements can do is speed it up a whole lot faster. And some lifestyles people can't adopt. If I have somebody that has a hard time walking or isn't getting any activity for whatever reason, pain or discomfort or what have you, and I need them to get blood flow to their brain, I'm gonna be recommending things like Citrinox and maybe nitric balance. So we want lifestyle to do it, but sometimes supplements will pack the next punch, especially on these categories. I'll get into other categories. So that's one strategy that I use clinically. Now, there's a million supplements out there. I'm not endorsing any one company. I never do. No company has everything. Just giving you some strategies. And these are all accessible on the website. I have videos on these, in fact, on the website, how to use them. Here's another one I like to use. This is a Metagenics product. It's called Ultra Glucose Control. It's a great bridge to help people start getting their blood sugar down when they have the surges, the spikes, and the crashes, uncontrolled diabetes and prediabetes, type 1 or type 2. This will really help. I've seen people start using this that are diabetics or prediabetics, and they'll say, oh, Dr. Harrison, wow, you know, I feel a lot more mentally alert. We weren't doing anything to their brain. We were managing their blood sugar problem a little bit. But again, none of these supplements should ever be permanent. They should be used, none of these ones should be permanent. They should be used as a bridge to get people on track. Something I talked about in that big diagram, one of my colleagues that we were talking about, methylation. This product is designed, the brain loves B vitamins. It loves B vitamins. B vitamin deficiencies create a lot of problems in the brain. We should be getting it from our diet. We should be getting it from animal protein. If we're not consuming animal protein, we're going to have to load up with B12 because that's the only place we can get it. Now, B9, B12, B6, this has many of them in it. It is great for methylation. Methylation is a process to help flush something called homocysteine out of the body. The higher homocysteine levels that are in the body, the more brain degeneration. So if you've ever done a lab panel of homocysteine, I know anybody I work with, I zero right in on it. We start working at getting that homocysteine down. This promotes methylation, which is a process to get homocysteine out of the body. I use a lot of this. I personally use it. I prescribe it a lot. It's great for that. So this is, again, methylation is one of the pieces that you want to really promote. People become poor methylators when they're toxic. When they live a toxic life, sleep deprivation, poor diets, no activity, stress, all of those things build more and more methylation or more and more homocysteine in the body, and it slows down methylation. So this enhances it. It's designed for that. This is an interesting product. There's all sorts of interesting ingredients in here. I'm not going to get into all of them. This was actually designed, this product, by Zymogen, Cogniquil. And when I was making this presentation for you guys, I picked the big ones. There's a million products on brain health, but I picked the big ones that I clinically see and my colleagues tend to see the best outcomes. So we're kind of cutting through all the craziness and getting right to the meat and potatoes of what's going to work. If it's going to work, these will work. Cogniquil. Cogniquil was designed for patients with ADD. That's the history behind this product. It's only been out for a couple of years, 3 years. And attention deficit disorder. That's what it was designed for. Then they said support clarity and motivation. Well, this helped areas of the brain to promote focus. But what I've seen for people who have cognition problems and brain fog, this was lifting them up. Sometimes it's pretty significant. So that's how I use it. I wouldn't use it for premature brain degeneration. I would use it for cognitive impairment or attention deficit issues. That's what I would use it for. But it was important to bring up. Omegas, fish oils. They're nature's original anti-inflammatory. That's the way I like to explain it. Let's say I have it here, brain nutrition for reducing inflammation. They're neuroinflammation. We look at the lowest levels of cognitive decline on the planet, and they are right on the coast, these individuals. Many probably reasons, but one reason that we see is high doses of omegas they're consuming in fish. We're not living on the coast, and a lot of our fish now is contaminated with mercury, so we can't consume that much of it. But we can still use it. We can still use it. So a rule of thumb for omegas, you should consume anywhere from 3 to 4 grams of fish oil a day. That's what you should consume. Okay. And that's quite a bit, actually. And this stuff, it's, anywhere from 4 to 6 capsules a day. But it is it's a major anti-inflammatory for the brain. Here's another one. There's all the fad of turmeric and curcumin going on for quite some time. And there's a reason for it. Not all turmeric's the same, not all supplements the same. This is one of the best ones I've seen from a turmeric formula, and I'd highly suggest staying away from curcumin. Curcumin has its place, but it's only one of many antioxidants found in turmeric. So if you just consume curcumin, you're missing out on all these very powerful antioxidants found in the original source. So I would recommend turmeric. I like this one because they have ingredients to enhance the absorption of the turmeric. It's a liquid, be careful. It stains. It's really, really significant, this one. Resveratrol is another extraction mostly found of grapes. It's the antioxidant found there, but it's another powerful anti-inflammatory. And turmeric and resveratrol, they call it resvero, but resveratrol, that's what it is. Together, they're the most powerful anti-inflammatory. So when I see neuroinflammation, inflammation, and brain inflammation, that is the first place I'll go to cut it down. But here's the kicker. If someone has significant digestive issues, and this is way beyond what we're talking about today, if someone has significant digestive issues, don't waste your money on turmeric or resveratrol, because you can't break it down. You need to have enough of a diverse bacterial species, gut biome, to break it down. You got to fix the gut first. So, don't just get this if you have severe digestive issues. If you don't, maybe it's something. There's cognitive problems. This is the granddad of anti-inflammatories. Our bodies make it. It's called glutathione. This is one formulation. And glutathione is a fire extinguisher for inflammation, not only anywhere in your body, but also in your brain. So these three, high doses of resveratrol, turmeric, and glutathione are very powerful. But I will tell you something. If you're able to read, they call this trisomal glutathione, but in the listing here, it says S-acetyl L-glutathione, SAG. Don't ever waste your money on L-glutathione, just L-glutathione. L-glutathione is, our bodies burn it up right away. 90% of what you consume of L-glutathione, you find that at a grocery store. Your stomach acid will burn it up and it'll never get in your bloodstream. So it's kind of a waste. You have to consume like 9 times what S-acetylglutathione. So just a little word on that. Now, brain health. So what the brain needs, it just kind of summary. The brain needs oxygen, stimulation, and balancing the glucose. Sources of neuroinflammation must be removed. All sources of inflammation. Supplements, why I didn't even put that in. So you can supplement with this. That's I guess what I meant to say. I was between appointments and I was putting this presentation together. You can supplement with anti-inflammatories for neuroinflammation, but recognize lifestyle is number one. And use the supplements to speed it up or to add that other layer. Rates of cognitive decline and premature brain degeneration are expected to skyrocket amongst the aging baby boomers. So this is just kind of a takeaway from our presentation today. So you can prevent and reduce premature brain aging and cognitive decline. You can do it. You have to start. You really want to start yesterday, right? Not in the future, because brain cells don't regenerate. They connect. They actually connect. You can promote brain growth, but it's not really regenerating a whole neuron. Neurons don't regenerate. They grow longer to connect around broken neurons. Okay. And again, dementia, Alzheimer's, and cognitive decline doesn't start when you're 70 or 60 or 80. It starts in your 20s. I've seen more than one early stage dementia case that were in their 30s. What were the criteria of it? They had, number one, they had very erratic sleeping patterns, and it didn't matter what they do. They couldn't follow the sleep patterns. They were night owls. Oh, Dr. Harrison, I'm just a night owl. I'm like, really? Okay. They were pre-diabetics and diabetics. So remember, these are red flags. So there's 2 things. They had, number 3, they had sources of neuroinflammation, chronic GI issues. Okay, well, a lot of people have digestive issues. With 60-some% in the United States right now have digestive issues. So that's not a red flag. But all of them together are significant. And then when they both told me, these are different times, but they both had the similar story. They say, well, and one thing I'm noticing is it seems like I'm starting to forget where I put my keys. Walking into rooms more so now that I don't know why I went there. I'm having a harder time to recall words and names and numbers, places, people that I know and places I've been. I have a hard time to remember where my friend lives. I say, okay, is this going on for like maybe a week? Maybe I had a bad sleep or something? Like, no, this has been progressing over 6 months, a year. That is a red flag. And the problem is in the conventional medical model, they're not they're not trained to look for early stage dementia with someone in their 30s. That's a 70-plus-year-old concern. That's not a 30-year-old. So these things get missed. These people get sent out of the office and say, well, work on your sleep. And that's it. These people keep doing the same things over and over. And what happens? Cognitive decline just keeps getting worse and worse. And then they end up like that teacher I'm telling you about that's as young as she is, mid-50s. And she's already early stage Alzheimer's, late stage dementia. Yeah. So take this serious. Conventional medical strategies do nothing to prevent cognitive decline. Most medications promote cognitive decline because they're worried about other things. Your heart becoming destroyed with heart attacks and so on and so forth. They're designed to keep you alive, not keep your brain working. Okay. So that's kind of a wrap here. I know there was quite a bit and I was bouncing around and all of that stuff, but I'm hoping that that it created some light, some insight on cognitive decline, what you can do about it, what the risk factors are, and recognizing that the aging brain is something we have to accept, but we shouldn't accept premature degeneration. I think that's the most important thing. At any time, anybody can, they can send me emails. My email address is here, office email, clinic's email, telephone. If they have questions about this, or if they have friends or family or loved ones that are looking for help, I highly recommend also looking at the website. There's a lot of information on the website, that there's videos on these products and how to use them and what to expect and when you'd want to use them, when you wouldn't want to use them. But see your brain as one of those things that controls everything. It's very important. It's your biggest asset, and it's fragile. And sleep deprivation. There's a classic example of brain degeneration. Chronic sleep deprivation. I showed you the picture of the brain with dementia and the healthy brain. Chronic degeneration or sleep deprivation will create brain atrophy. Maybe the brains will shrink with sleep deprivation. They've done it in rats 1 million times. And as humans are 100 years ago, we're sleeping over 20% less than we did 100 years ago. So we have all of these things mounting up against our brains. And that's why there's so much cognitive decline. That's why I'll see people in their 20s in my office that can't sit through a full hour of a consultation or an appointment because they can't focus. We're able to get them back, but the more progressive it is, the harder it is to get them back. And sometimes you just can't. It's just gone too far. So hopefully this was inspiring, not too scary. Hopefully it was motivating. And again, you can feel free, because I know I got another appointment here right away, but feel free to email us. It's all on our website. There's over 100 videos on our website and our YouTube channel, and the link to our YouTube channel is there. So strategies for all of this and many more. So hopefully that was helpful. I think we're capping off, just making it right at an hour here, but feel free to reach out. We're in our office Monday through Thursday. You call the office, you'll probably speak to Allegra. Allegra will be able to give you any information you need, or even if anybody needs a consultation or some guidance, have them reach out. So with that being said, I'm Dr. Glenn Harrison, and thanks for joining. And in a month's time, we're going to be doing another masterclass on another topic yet to be determined. So anyway, you guys have a great night, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.